Hey guys, my name's Josh Challender with AIS Construction Equipment here out of Lansing, Michigan. Standing in front of a John Deere 333G skid loader. I sold this machine yesterday, and as I was walking the customer through the cab and showed him what all the buttons and switches do, he was like, holy smokes, that's, quite a bit to remember. So I'm going to make this video. Keep in mind, I am not a photo editor, not a video editor. I'm going to try to do this all in one, felt swoop. But maybe this could be something that he can refer back to rather than going through the operator's manual. The G series inside the cab is going to be quite similar, and the buttons are going to do quite similar to like what the E series does. So you should be able to refer back to this video if you have an E series skid loader too. So, going inside the cab. All right, so as soon as you sit down, it will activate your gauge cluster, and it'll activate your courtesy lights, which you can play with in your settings, which we'll go through over there. How long your courtesy lights stay on after you get out of the machine, so on and so forth. We'll get to that. Going over to your SSM, your sealed switch module, over on your right-hand side, you'll take your top left green button, and you press it once, and that will activate the power on your machine. It'd be the same way as your car. You'll flip your key forward before the start position. So that'll fire up your radio. It'll turn on your blower. It's just prepping the machine, right? Prepping the machine to start. Press and hold on that same button to actually start the engine. In order to activate your hydraulics and turn off your parking brake, you're gonna have to come down on your lap bar, and your parking brake button is directly below your start button. So you flip that off, it'll turn off both the parking brake for travel, and it'll also simultaneously turn off your lock for your hydraulics. So right now, with everything off, I can do both. All right. Travel, bucket. That's also for the auxiliaries outside. If you wanted to, let's see here, put your bucket up in the air, turn your parking brake on, so you could still, or you can't travel, right? It's gonna throw a release parking brake alarm at me, but it doesn't turn off your hydraulics. Okay? So in order to lock your hydraulics, you can lock that. And again, it'll throw a, enable hydraulic light on. So we'll just flip that off. Yeah. So, engine start. Parking brake release, which will simultaneously turn off your hydraulic release. To stop the machine, to shut the machine off, you press on that stop button. These two buttons down here are going to be sensitivity levels. So with the far left light only illuminating, it's going to limit your hydraulic joystick sensitivity. With it, that's for if you're working right against a building, or you just need to slow down your hydraulics for more cautious work, or more precise work. And again, I think actually this one, all the way to the left, gives you 80% response rate. And you can keep on clicking that all the way through until all three of your lights are fully illuminated to give you 100% quick response speed. And it's going to be the same thing. So that one's going to be for your travel, for your transmission, right, response speed. And it's the same theory for your bucket response speed, okay? Working one step over is going to be to turn your accelerator pedal on the floor into a decelerator pedal like a dozer. So obviously we can turn this, whoops. Over your RPM screen. When I hit the floor pedal, I can increase engine RPM, right? But say I had a blade on here, or a grader blade, or some kind of attachment that I would want to run 80% of the time at wide open throttle, I will have a rheostat up here, and I can click that button, and now when I hit my accelerator pedal, quote unquote, I can turn it into a decelerator pedal, and I can lower engine RPMs. Right? So turn all that back down. If you ever get into a machine, I'll turn that back. If you ever get into a machine and somebody left this rheostat, rheostat throttle, cracked open, and you're like, man, I can't do anything with my foot. Why isn't the machine increasing RPM? Well, you always have to make sure, in order to use your foot pedal accelerator, that has to be turned, the rheostat has to be turned all the way down to turtle. Right? So it's just one easy stepping stone just to think about if you don't have any floor response. Okay? Moving over to spot number 3. This machine is set up in ISO style controls. So this is a pattern control changer, a selectable pattern control. John Deere throughout the years had 3 different styles. ISO is the most common style that anybody runs anymore, where you would have all of your bucket functions in your right hand, all of your travel, steering, right, in your left hand. Bucket tilt up, bucket tilt down, bucket up, bucket down. We can change this if, somebody grew up with a Bobcat or a Case, and they wanted to run H pattern controls, and that'll make it run like your 0-turn lawnmower, right? So, I'm trying to hold this camera up. Both your left-hand joystick going forward will control your left track, and vice versa. And then your bucket functions are here, right? And that's how a lot of, some of these older machines that were still ran on cables were ran. This machine in particular doesn't have it, but they do sell John Deere skid loaders that have all 3. Again, I know like the older Case 1845s and some of the older Case skid loaders had foot pedal controls down here that would control your bucket, and you'd still have travel controls up here on your joystick. If it had the foot pedals on the floor, it would go, the light would be illuminated all the way to the F for foot pedal. But for now, I run things in ISO. So this machine, it is a tracking unit, and it has float and ride control, okay? So in order to turn on your float, you have that light illuminated. Put your bucket on the ground, right? And like right now I have this, the front end of the track's picked off the ground an inch or 2. And your right side trigger finger on your joystick, let's see if I can make it a little more exaggerated. So now I got the machine off the ground 6 inches. You press that button, right, your trigger finger button, and the machine settled down. So let's see if I can do that again, just so you can see. Oh, now I got it set up there. So machine's off the ground, pressing the trigger button, and it settles. Don't hold on to this trigger finger button when you are floating. It'll throw a code on you. Don't need to hang on to it. When you're floating, you can apply down pressure, right? See how that boom settled down there? And then you pull back, or however you're gonna travel, and that bucket will actually float up and down, right? It'll apply constant pressure on the ground, and you can back grade and things like that. What this also has is your ride control. So, see if I can show it there. When the ride control is really nice if you're running across a field or uneven ground, and it's more exaggerated when you have a load inside the bucket. But that bucket's actually going to flow up and down as you're traveling, instead of being stiff with your machine. And if you're stiff with your machine and you go into a valley real quick, you're going to feel the immediate impact in the cab. Where this, it kind of puts a separation between your bucket and your cab, and it's pretty hard to see in that video, but that bucket will actually float up and down, which makes things really, really nice going on over uneven terrain. Okay. The last button here, this is going to be for a parallel lift. And essentially, what that is, again, see if we can see that in the video. I have this bucket flat on the ground right now. And if you could see, when I lift this bucket up, sitting the way it is now, it's going to come up, come up, come up, come up like this, right? Come down like this. Whereas in a parallel lift, it's going to try to keep, you'd use this as when you have your forks on it. You would try to, or the machine will keep it level coming up like this, so you're not having your load come back on your cab, right? So, bucket will come up like this. When you turn on that switch here, that bucket's going to do one of these numbers as it comes up to try to keep things flat. That way you're not spilling everything on your cab, you're not losing shit off your forks, that kind of stuff. So we'll turn that off. Again, reach that switch for your throttle. You'll see we have some of these outfitter switches missing. This machine in particular does not have high flow. That would go there. This machine also doesn't have the LED light package, so there'd be additional lights there. But starting from left to right, you'll have your power quick disconnect. So if I was going to disconnect this bucket to put on another attachment, I would press and hold on the unlock button. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at these two little slots there, here and over here. And there's going to be red levers that are going to come up, and you have to make sure that you watch them both, because one will come up 50%, then it'll put power to the other one, and then that one will either go up 100% or 50%, then it'll go back to the other side. So let's watch that, and you can see what I mean by the red levers. See that left side starting to creep up, then the right side went all the way up, then back to the left side. And you can audibly hear when it's fully up, you can hear some ticking in the back. So now I curl my bucket out to push that bucket away, back up, and I'm fully disconnected. You do the same thing. Do this. You hook your bucket in. Peel your bucket back. I always do a little shake of the bucket there to make sure that I'm sitting in my grooves all the way. And you press and hold on your lock. You're watching those red clips come back down. And again, you are listening to, I don't know if you can hear that, but it has more of an aggressive click when it's fully locked in. Part of the safety thing that I always do is I just make sure that those pins are fully locked. So I pick the front end of the machine just right off the ground. If it's not locked in all the way, you'll hear a clunk or you'll hear something. Just a little safety thing. Next one's, obviously, lights. There's a 3-position light. Your middle off. Middle position is your front lights. All the way up is your front and rear lights, okay? This auxiliary switch is if you were to run a multi-function attachment, like a grater blade that'll have a a roll, a tilt, a side. You know, it's an additional power outlet to power a solenoid to tell your attachment what to do. As well as down here on your left and right joystick, on your right hand side of your left joystick, both of these two switches will be auxiliaries for attachments, and as well as both of these two. Okay? This machine has a auto or a hydraulic reversing fan. Again, 3-position switch. Down is all the way off. The middle position is, I have this machine set up right now for that fan to kick on for 1 minute or 30 seconds every 25 minutes. And we can adjust how often it comes on, the frequency that it comes on in the settings. We'll get to that here in a quick sec. And the third position is, it doesn't go into detent, but you'll press and hold for 10 seconds or so. And you're listening, and there it goes. That hydraulic fan will kick on for 30 seconds or a minute. Right? So if you're in a really dusty environment or working in a lot of wood chips, you just want to blow out the backside of that radiator. Okay? So again, this machine's a standard flow unit. If it had high flow, John Deere is now using the same auxiliary lines in the E series and the D series for high flow. Okay? Back in the older days in the CT series, and I believe even in the D series, you would see out on your left-hand boom, there would be a additional port. It'd be 30% or so larger than the standard lines. That would be for high flow, you know, so you can't just walk past an E series or a G series and determine if it's high flow or not. You actually have to get in the cab. One of these outfitter switches would have a rectangle with a plus in it and then a little dash up top. That'll indicate if it's high flow or not. Fairly self-explanatory. AC off, AC on. We had our first snow here in Michigan today, so we're going to leave that off. Okay. Talking about auxiliary hydraulics and running attachments, over on your right hand joysticks, you'll have a rocker switch here. Not sure if you can hear that or not, but you can hear the machine surge because it's trying to push. You know, it's deadheading essentially because I don't have an attachment set up. But that's going to be how to run your hydraulics. Obviously, forward would be one way, pull back would be the other way. These machines, I believe, all come factory with standard flow auxiliary hydraulics. So you'll have 2 ports on the outside of the machine for each direction of flow. And then you'll have an additional port. It'll generally be a little bit smaller, and that'll be your return to tank. If you ever running an attachment with a motor on it, you'll have a return to tank line as well. Okay. Again, both of these switches are just for additional circuits to go on for attachments. A lot of these machines will have a 12 or a 14 connect pin on the outside, and some of them will actually have an additional 3 pin and an additional 2 pin to do to plug into some other attachments, right? Going over to your left-hand joystick. Again, these are the same thing as on the other side, just additional controls for auxiliaries. Essentially, they're dud buttons unless you have an attachment that requires them. Okay? Your left-hand side of your left-hand joystick, top is going to be your horn. Bottom is going to be for continuous flow. So you would press and hold that, whatever direction you want your attachment to spin, or whatever direction you want your flow to go. And you press and hold on your bottom left-hand side, left-hand joystick for 3 seconds. That'll activate continuous flow, so you're not always having to hold this up. All right? All makes sense. And moving to the bottom here, this machine does have a cold start package. It also has a heated seat right below you, and air ride seat. Press in to raise, pull out to lower down the seat. This is set fine for me. And for you can slide your seat forward and back. That'd be all the way to your left hand side. And if you turn around, there is a lever in here. Oh, right down here. On your left hand side of your seat back here, you'll pull this and it will pull the back of your seat towards your bucket. You may do that for, the operator's manuals back there. Some guys may just say 99% of the time these seats sit all the way back anyways, but that is how you do that down there, kind of a hidden switch. Both sides of these glass open from the back, slide forward, open from the forward, slide back. Radio, backup camera. Now, let's see here. Before we move up front, your left hand side trigger finger, so right hand side trigger finger is going to be for your float. Right hand side trigger finger is going to be for your 2-speed. When I click that, you'll see a little bunny rabbit pop up. Click it again, and the bunny rabbit disappears. So that's in your single speed. See that? On your right hand side here, you're going to have a toggle switch. And what that's going to do is if you're running a broom or a snowblower or a defacer and you wanted to keep engine RPMs high, so you can keep flow rate high, you can keep, you'll have a more powerful machine when your engine RPMs are up, right? But you may not want to travel as fast as what you would in your first speed. You may want to go half power. So 2-speed, single speed, come down here and you rock this back towards turtle, and up here you'll see we can get this down to, all the way down. Let's put it all the way down. Nah, we're not gonna go all the way down. Put it down to 20%. And we'll go engine RPMs wide open, bucket up in the air, and I'll press my travel lever as far as I would. And you can see I'm barely moving there. Barely moving. And you can put that all the way down to 1% if you want. If you want to run it at 50%, you can do that, right? All the way forward, quite a bit faster. 90%, almost to where you're at with a single speed. You just pop that all the way back up into 100%. And now you're at the same speed as your single speed, wide open throttle, right? To get it out of there, you press your trigger finger again, your your turtle goes away. It goes back to nothing on the screen as far as travel. That'll tell you that you're back in your single speed. Click it again, then it goes into your 2-speed. Now go wide open, right? We're gonna turn that back down. That's noisy. All right, so we'll get back into your monitor here. To go through your, I'm going to call this your frontline settings, the stuff that you would typically want to just keep on your screen for your day-to-day operations. The default will be your hours, or it'll be your depth gauge. It's going to be up here, right? Fuel, got to put fuel in it. Temperature sensor. Hours, next. Voltage, next. Hydraulic temp, next. Coolant temp, next. Engine RPM, def. Pretty simple. Click your menu, and this will go through some of your settings. And these settings, some of these you can't change while the machine is running. You'll come back here, you'll shut the machine off, you'll turn the power on, but you're not going to start the machine. I know you have to do that to change the hydraulic reversing fan intervals. I don't know about courtesy lighting. So, your auxiliary hydraulics override. That's going to be for, most people won't use this, but if you're a builder and you have a platform or a man basket out on the end, you can, without somebody in the seat, you can still have your auxiliary hydraulics function. So you can, actually, I think you can actually raise your bucket up and down too. Because if you're in a man basket, the machine's running, nobody's in the seat, you still got to put that man basket up and down. So that's what that override is. To scroll through, you'll press next. So this will be for your exhaust filter. We'll click into this one. It'll tell you your soot level. So we'll click into it one more time. Soot level's low. Back. We'll scroll through it again. Auto cleaning. This will tell you, or you can adjust how often this is going to go through an auto regen. And so on an auto regen, and I can't remember the exact number, but if this machine will automatically regen and continue operating it as you were. It's going to increase engine RPMs by 200, maybe 300 engine RPMs, and it's self-cleaning. You don't have to do anything with it. But if you shut the machine off, which is highly ill-advised, right? You want it to continue, and it'll have a light up here with a little, I think it's yellow, and it'll have a little swoosh to it. It'll be fairly obvious when it's self-cleaning, but continue operating it as it is. Don't shut it off. If you have to shut it off, I think John Deere gives you, it may be 3 or 4 times before shutting it off in the middle of a auto clean before it cycles 100% through that auto regen. You can do a part cleaning. Some guys call this a forced regen, and it will derate your machine down to like 20%. If you don't do this and you continue to shut it off while it's in the middle of a regen, it'll derate the machine down to, 10, 15, 20%, something along those lines. And essentially all that's doing is it's telling you, hey, look, it really, soot level's high. It needs to go through a regen, but we're going to allow the machine to move to get it out of a garage, out of a barn, off a roadway, somewhere safe. So that's what that part regen does. Oops. Exhaust filter. Courtesy lighting, fairly self-explanatory. You can adjust how long the lighting stays on after you get out of the machine, or you can just turn it off altogether. When you power it off, everything can come off. Hydraulic reversing fan intervals, we'll click into that one. Alright, so I had it set up for every 20 minutes, the machine's going to kick on for a minute. And you can play with that interval. Again, you got to shut the machine off and power it on without starting the machine to change that. You can look at codes. So select in. If there's any active codes, it'll pop up there. Any stored codes, you can see that there. This is going to be to play around with your monitor if you were wanting to set the machine in Celsius or Fahrenheit or things like that. Job timer, fairly self-explanatory. If you want to figure out how long you're on this one particular job, you can come in here, reset job timer, start your job timer, and it'll just tell you how long this machine was on that one particular job. The auto idle. So with M-term tier 4 and final tier 4, machines like to run fairly hot. So you're continuously, in my recommendations, you're running this thing fairly hard. And it's not recommended to let these things idle a lot. You know, that's how you build soot accumulation inside your DPF. So if you're not using it for like more than 5 minutes, just shut the thing off. But if you're running engine RPMs high and you don't touch your joysticks for a certain set amount of time, and I'm sure you can control how often that comes on and off, it'll bring the machine back down to an idle for fuel consumption savings, if I can talk. Yes, that's it. But again, in my opinion, interim tier 4, final tier 4, anything with a DPF, try not to let these things idle for too long. I mean, that's just how you're going to build soot. And you can adjust your tracking. So if your joystick gets off or something happens where you're starting to notice a mistrack, you can actually get in here and set one side faster, so it'll have more of a flow rating to one side of a track than the other, so you can, you know, if you're going across 100 yards, it's not going to start veering off one way or the other. So you can control each side if you do ever experience that. I don't know anybody who's really ever touched it, but that is a thing. Radio. Put that up. The last thing is, you know, John Deere makes it quite easy to do your maintenance on these machines. Both of the engine side panels come off. There's going to be 2 grooves on the frame of the machine that the side panels hook into, 2 in the back, and then there's going to be like a J hook that locks into a bolt. But when you're servicing the machine or something, right, or actually any time that you have your boom up in the air and you get out, we'll do that. Boom all the way up in the air. That's all the way up. You turn this, and you can't see it on the outside of the machine, but what it's going to do is it's just going to poke out 2 levers, 2 bars on each side, and that's going to make it where this boom can't come down. So that's all the way up where I had it, you know, and I'm kind of going over relief there, but the booms can't go down. Less so on newer machines, but especially on older machines, you know, you may have some drifting going on. You may have some internal cylinder leakage. It's a safety thing. If you're going to be working and climbing underneath of the bucket, make sure that lever's turned to your right-hand position. Takes 30 seconds. Could save you from getting squashed. Right thing to do. You know, the other 2 things that may be of benefit to mention, John Deere makes things very easy to clean out the belly pan of this machine. 2 bolts, both sides. You take out those bolts. I think on the E series you had to take out the floor mat. On the G series, doesn't look to be so. You take out these 2 bolts, and you can flip this cab all the way up, and underneath here, that's where your hoses are. If you're pushing snow with it, or if you're going to be in a salty environment, or, I mean, truthfully, you should lift the cab up every once in a while and clean all that crud out. It'll greatly improve your relationship with whoever's working on it. You know, if there's salt sticking on all the ends of your hoses, you know, it'll sit there. So if you flip open this cab, you spray that out. I don't know if there's an actual recommendation from the manufacturer of how often you do it, but especially coming out of the winter, you got to make sure that all that stuff's clean and you're not just letting stuff sit on all of your hoses. All right, we can do a quick little walk around. John Deere they try to make everything as easy as they can, right? One of the things that I think, in my opinion, that they hid was where you check hydraulic oil. And when you check hydraulic oil, it's also important to don't check it with your boom all the way up. And it's the same thing with excavators. You have to check each machine the manufacturer desired way. Because if you check it in the wrong direction, you may be pulling fluid from the reservoir into the cylinders and it'll show low. Well, if you have it where they want it, the fluid gets pushed back into the tank and that's where they want it. So underneath of the left side loader arm, between the door, or between the engine compartment panel and your loader arm, you'll see right back in there 2 arrows, and that'll be to check hydraulic fluid back there. Okay? Cracking open the doors. In my opinion, John Deere has the absolute best location for your DEF fluid fill spot. Other people put it in really goofy places where it makes it hard to access. That's a really good spot. Diesel fuel, hydraulic fill, engine oil fill, engine oil dipstick, coolant. See the hydraulic burst fan just kicked on. So it's blowing, it's cleaning out that radiator, sucking everything out. Maybe it was only 15 seconds that was on. Again, to take off these side panels, you grab a hold here. You just want to make sure that's locked on that side and it's in the groove. You kind of see that there, right? You want to make sure it's in there and sitting on top of that lock right there. And it falls right into place. There's 2 grooves on the inside here. Can't really see. Oh, right there actually. Right there. So come on the inside of that. This is folded around. Then lock it in. Sits right here. So again, this machine is fairly loaded out. The only 2 things I really didn't see, it does have the cold start package. So for your block heater, it doesn't have high flow. And it doesn't have the LED light package, so you can put extra lights on the side. This is what I was talking about here. Again, this one wasn't a high flow, but even if it did have high flow, it would still only have these 3, right? Pressure, each direction, and a return to tank. Some of these will have, this is your 12 or your 14 connection pin. This will be your 2 or 3. That one's a 3. Some of these do come out with a 2 connection pin too. Just, a power on, power off. Other than that, and there is probably one more thing. See these orange tabs up top here? What those are for, don't ever touch them unless you're in an emergency. If you get yourself, I had a guy tell me a story once where he was pushing wood. He was a farmer guy pushing wood into a pit to have a fire, right? And the fire was going. He was just pushing things in. He was on a wheeled machine. He got his front tires in the pit, got stuck, and his bucket was obviously up, so you couldn't open up your door, right? The cross member there was at the door height, and you couldn't open up your door, so we had to bust out the back window. Well, nowadays they put in quick releases, which are those 2 orange levers. You pop those things off, that door will come right off. It'll be held on by that hinge on that other side. So click open that hinge, pop open those 2 orange release levers, that door will fall right off. That way you can get out of the machine in case of an emergency. All right. So again, probably a little bit long-winded. I'm not a video editor guy, but if you like the content, if there was something you'd like to see more of, I guess just let me know. I can go through some other machines. If this has helped you, make sure that you reach out. Everything helps. So do appreciate it. Again, Josh Challender with AIS Construction Equipment. My cell phone's 517-641-4902. Do appreciate you.